Now, that climate change summit opens in the wake of South Africa's worst power cuts on record. Remember that rotational blackouts were first introduced back in 2007. When combined, we've spent over 100 full days in darkness. And just last month, Eskom's head of energy transition quit. Now, with government looking to rely less on coal, plans are in place to go green. South Africa's delegation is taking this green plan to the summit in the hopes of securing a financing framework. Let's discuss this further with Business Unity South Africa CEO Cas Coovadia. A very good evening to you, Cas Coovadia. Thank you for joining us this evening. Let's discuss this financing plan very broadly before we get into some of the details. What is it likely to look like, or what would business like it to look like so that it gets the buy-in that it would need from those that it would need to invest in it?
Well, look, it's early days yet in structuring the funds that have been committed by the EU, UK, US, and France. The government has appointed Daniel Eminelli to head up their sort of negotiation team. What business would like to see, one, is to work with Daniel in negotiating the structuring of these funds. And we need to structure this fund in a way that also can leverage private sector funding in South Africa, because there is significant interest amongst a number of corporates to invest in decarbonization, to invest in renewable energy, to invest in hydrogen, solar, and others. And we need to ensure that the funds that have been committed are structured in a way that actually releases those private sector funds. We would want to participate because we believe that it's businesses that's going to put the projects on the table that need to be funded. And speaking to some of the corporates, projects are in the pipeline, and we can put those projects on the table. We would certainly want to go to COP, and I'll be there next week, to actually talk to the sorts of projects we can put on the table, to talk to potential funders, those that have already committed and others, to see how we can work together and leverage private sector funding in South Africa, and what our government needs to do to create the environment and to enable the release of private sector funding into these projects.
Is it not of concern for business? I mean, over the last few weeks, we've heard from the different government stakeholders, Cas, in terms of their views on the just energy transition. And there are concerns that have been raised previously about the misalignment in the messaging from the Office of the Presidency, from the Office of the Department of Mineral Resources, etc. Is that not of concern in that there is no united messaging that exists within our government so that the unlocking that you speak about can actually happen?
Well, absolutely. And we've raised this time and time again. We've raised that the President has to lead in this. And a single message has got to come from the President. The President has now announced an energy plan, and the National Energy Crisis Committee established in the Presidency is now tasked with implementing that plan. And as business, we are working very closely with the President to see how we can actually enable the implementation of that plan. But we have been absolutely clear that there must be now a single message from the Presidency. This is the President's plan. And the President must ensure that there's a single message that says that we will move towards a more diversified energy mix in our country. We will reduce our reliance on fossil fuel. We will speed up the renewable energy program and enable Eskom to actually have the grid capacity to get renewables onto the grid as quickly as possible. The President's decision to lift the ceiling on embedded energy from 10 megawatts to 100 megawatts and now to get rid of the ceiling altogether in his plan showed what happens when the environment is created and when there's a single message. After that, we've got 20 to 30 projects in the pipeline worth about 3 to 4 billion rand that private sector has invested in and will come onto the grid in 1.5 to 2 years' time. So single messaging is critical, and driving this from the presidency is absolutely critical, because this is one of the most critical issues we have to deal with as a country in the coming years.
And this is going to be critical, that we are serious about introducing timelines that are not only practical but are actually achievable in creating that diversified energy mix, because Eskom has said, should we see economic recovery of a nature that is bigger than what we are anticipating at the moment, the national power grid won't be able to handle that. And so the recovery may take up to 5 years. So that movement needs to happen as a matter of urgency, if you will, Coovadia, so that Eskom doesn't cripple from any kind of economic growth that we are hoping to see in South Africa.
Absolutely. And that's why it's not an Eskom problem. It's an energy problem. And we need to deal with our energy crisis, which includes Eskom, but Eskom will be a player in our energy solutions, with a whole range of private sector players coming into the market. And the president's plan actually talks to us. A whole lot of private sector players coming into the market to actually produce energy, to get renewables on the road, to produce solar panels in our country, and to actually then work with Eskom through this process to ensure that those get onto the grid as quickly as possible. The Eskom executive is saying exactly that they will be a part of a broader energy mix. We need to sort out the Eskom debt problem, and we expect a firm announcement in the February budget on that. And we believe that with the new Eskom board, the Eskom executive understanding quite clearly what needs to be done, and crowding in private sector players will actually, in the next 2 to 3 years, begin to get us to address the energy crisis we have in this country.
And of course, we have to make sure that in crowding in those private investors into diversifying the energy provision in South Africa, we follow the just energy transition, that all communities benefit from that transition. Yeah. Is this something that businesses are conscious of as they look to diversify the power mix?
Absolutely. In fact, through the National Business Initiative, which has worked with the Boston Consultancy Group, we've probably done the most detailed work on a just transition pathway in the country. So business is taking this extremely seriously. We've got to move from reliance on fossil fuel to a more diversified energy infrastructure and energy mix in our country in a way that enables us to grow the economy and should not be inhibiting economic growth, and also in a way that we limit job losses. But the work that the NBI and the Boston Consultancy Group has done and continues to do is beginning to demonstrate the economic opportunities in investing in new forms of energy, in dealing with climate change and moving towards the targets we've actually set for decarbonization. And we need to capitalize on the economic opportunity that this presents, so as to reskill our people towards those opportunities, minimize job losses where we can, and take our people along with us so that we continue on the path to inclusive growth. And we should use this as an opportunity to actually increase our ability to grow the economy and make sure that it's inclusive.